I've got one more guilty pleasure band.
Yeah.
And that's Weezer.
The first two albums.
I even like later albums. Not all of them. I like
so
some
that's
of the
guilty
later.
pleasure. That's really, you made fun of me for liking Always by Bon Jovi, and you like post Pinkerton Weezer.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, then I don't talk to you anymore.
Yeah, since the controversy is public now, maybe it's time to take a look at some albums from the dreaded post-Pinkerton era of Weezer. Welcome to MMM, Murdoch's Music Minute, and of course, for this one I'm sitting in the indie corner. Today's album review contains a bus accident, rock opera leanings, and a song that got viral a good decade after its original release. And I hope everything's gonna be alright in the end. Yeah, I did my best to appear in the suitable 1990s Weezer fan look. The glasses, I'm afraid, are my real ones.
I had another nightmare.
Go back to sleep, honey. Everything will be all right in the end.
Now, you who have clicked on this video, I'm sure you know Weezer. For some, they are kind of an alternative one-hit wonder, and for a lot of others, they are absolute heroes of the power pop, some even say emo genre of the mid to late 90s. Still, it might be very interesting to look a little bit into their history before talking about the album that I've chosen for this review. So bear with me, and let's start with a little slideshow about the drastically inconsistent release history and overall history of Weezer up until 2014, when they felt they had to release an album that was kind of an apology to fans and kind of a return to their rock roots. Weezer were founded when Rivers Cuomo moved from Connecticut to Los Angeles, California, and his metal band from high school disbanded. He met drummer Patrick Wilson and bassist Matt Sharp around 1989 and for a while shared a flat with them. Influenced by the burgeoning alternative rock movement with artists like the Pixies and Nirvana, Cuomo changed his songwriting style and formed a band with Wilson, bass player Scotty Chapman, and a guitarist called Jason Cropper. This band project eventually evolved into Weezer in 1992 after some name changes and the first bassist being replaced with Matt Sharp, who was impressed with Cuomo's latest demos, which would constitute the material for Weezer's legendary debut album. After firing original guitarist Cropper and taking Brian Bell on board, Weezer recorded their self-titled debut in 1994. The album quickly became known as the Blue Album and brought a new combination of indie tropes and catchy power pop with a slight punk attitude and a little bit of 60s surf to the table. Together with the geeky lyrics and image of the band, the album, and especially the hook-laden single Buddy Holly, turned the band into an indie sensation with pop appeal. The Blue Album is Weezer's best-selling release to this day. While working on the material for the much-anticipated follow-up, Rivers enrolled at Harvard University and had to undergo painful leg surgery. This resulted in a phase of isolation and frustration, while other Weezer members started individual side projects, most notably Matt Sharp, who founded indie rock band The Rentals in 1994. The second Weezer album, Pinkerton, took until autumn of 1996 and presented a raw, emotionally darker version of the band. In the songs, Cuomo expressed and grappled with more problematic aspects of his psyche and personality, especially with regards to his relationships with women. Critics and fans who had expected more fun power pop hits rejected the album, resulting in an indefinite hiatus of the band. That hiatus, one could also say temporary split, lasted until 2000. Cuomo spent the time at Harvard University but also worked on side projects with changing musicians, including Greg Brown, formerly of Cake, and Matt Sharp. First reunion rehearsals and work on new material in 1998 resulted in disagreements. Sharp left the group and Cuomo sank into a phase of depressions. It took an offer to perform at a festival in Japan to get Weezer running again. They hired Rick Ocasek again to produce their third album. Self-titled, but this time using the color green, it signaled a relaunch of the band, now with Mickey Welch on bass. The songs were power pop, but with pop hook lines and a less personal, almost detached way of lyrics. The album, despite its maybe a bit safe, one-dimensional sound, yielded massively popular singles in Hash Pipe and the more laid-back Island in the Sun. After this, Welch left the band again for health reasons and was replaced with Scott Schreiner. The next album followed in 2002 and had a less commercial, harder-edged but also melancholic and varied approach. Although not as commercially successful as its predecessor, Maladroit marks one of the band's most interesting musical projects. The next album was intended to add a more mainstream sound with more keyboards to Weezer's power pop style, but also more personal lyricism again. The result was Make Believe from 2005, a commercially successful album that however received mixed reactions. The album's lead single Beverly Hills even hit number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, but estranged some fans with its unashamed commercial approach for a new teenage market. Subsequently, Weezer took a break and Cuomo graduated from Harvard and got married in 2006. Guitarist Brian Bell started a new side project called The Relationship. But Weezer returned with yet another colored self-titled album, The Red Album, in 2008, produced by famous production guru Rick Rubin. This release saw the band in a more loose, playfully experimental mood with stylistic detours and more eccentric, quirky arrangements. For the first time, also other band members contributed songs and they even switched instruments on recordings. This freer approach was also extended to live shows. In 2009, the album Raditude followed, a party-oriented collection of songs that involved various guest features from hip-hop musicians, outside songwriters, and generally updated Weezer's sound for a contemporary pop audience, a choice that was not met with unanimous praise from critics and fans. Since its release, Raditude has been described as both a bold pop album as well as one of the worst albums of all time. Album number 8 followed in 2010 and was called Hurley after one of the characters from famous TV series Lost. The album offered a more traditional Weezer power pop sound and was generally considered an improvement after Raditude. After releasing a compilation album with re-recordings of unused songs from the years 1993 to 2010, work began for the 9th album, but it should take until 2014 for it to be released. The album went through various iterations between 2011 and 2014. Originally, the plan had been to already release the 9th album around the year 2011. And work with different producers was involved and various album ideas ranging from a rock opera set in space to a more philosophical rock musical with the title Ecce Homo. Main inspiration for the final album title was a bus accident during a tour involving Rivers Cuomo, his wife, his daughter, and an assistant in 2009. Cuomo suffered several broken ribs and internal injuries, internal bleedings, and allegedly while he was lying on that bus, which I think skid on an icy road or something like that, the phrase "everything will be alright in the end" came to his mind. The album concept and the track lists went through different phases and evolved. About 200 tracks are said to have been written between 2010 and 2014, when Everything Will Be Alright in the End eventually was released. The original album also came with, to me, rather inconsequential liner notes and stories about a fictitious band called the Astronauts and a couple of other characters, adding a sort of story backbone to the songs, but you don't really need them to, understand and enjoy the 13 tracks that were finally chosen for Everything Will Be Alright in the End. Each of those tracks belong to one thematic group, one of three thematic groups. The first one being relationship issues or relation to women, most of course from the point of view of main songwriter Rivers Cuomo. The second one being the relation to fans as an artist or as a band. So there is quite a meta level involved with those songs. And the third one, looking for a father or reflections about father figures in general. Why exactly all these themes are best summarized by means of an artwork of the artist Chris McMahon depicting a monster in a mountainous landscape is a bit unclear to me, to be honest, even though I like the picture. Maybe it's more about the general idea of a nightmare or something menacing that eventually will turn out all right in the end. As mentioned, lots of song ideas and demos were tried out and recorded during the years in between Hurley, the predecessor album, and the final release of Everything Will Be Alright in the End. Dozens of songs or pre-versions that never made it onto the final album, some of which appeared in reworked form on later Weezer releases. But enough of unreleased songs, let's get into the official tracks. Ain't Got Nobody firmly states from the beginning that Weezer are back in guitar-heavy power pop mode. The song really tries to recapture what old Weezer fans would probably deem the classic Weezer sound, somewhere between 1990s indie rock, punk pop, and a more aggressive variant of power pop, woven around simplistic yet catchy and hook-filled melodies. Lyrically, this opening track presents the typical nerdy, always a bit self-pitying content that is a trademark of Rivers Cuomo's rock persona. It's a solid start, if maybe a little bit Weezer by numbers. Now we need to talk about Back to the Shack, the lead single to the album, apologizing to fans while at the same time having a love-hate relationship with them is a theme in River Cuomo's work or life. First, after the really scathing reviews and negative reactions to Weezer's second album that almost finished the band for good, and now on this album, as openly in song form, as a reaction to old fans who got alienated by pop trend chasing moves, such as the unloved album Raditude from 2009. It's awful. Back to the Shack features ridiculously apologetic lyrics such as "I thought I'd get a new audience, I forgot that disco sucks. Sorry, rock fans." Cringe and ingenuity are almost indistinguishable with Weezer. This is one of their songs that are so painfully corny and silly, but I just can't dislike them. They are too damn catchy. Canadians definitely liked Going Back to the Shack with Weezer, as the song got to #1 in the rock charts over there.
Take me back, back to the shack, back to the start with the lightning strap. Kicking the door, more hardcore, rocking out like it's 94. Let's turn up the radio, turn off those stupid singing shows. I know where we need to go, back to the shack.
Next up is Eulogy for a Rock Band. Behind this, by Weezer standards, rather unwieldy title, the first song from the group of songs about father figures and idols is hiding. So this one is about musical idols to look up to, musical idols that fade away. The song is a bit more serious and bombastic in tone. There's some neat guitar work going on. I think this is actually a really good track.
You moved the people to sobbing, inspiring. You spoke for the world in your songs. Adios, rock band that we love the most. This is a toast to what you did.
With Lonely Girl, we get back to the category of songs about relationships to women again. This song dates back to an old unused song, very likely from the era of the Green album called Homely, and it's very possible that the producer Rick Ocasek motivated the band to dig out this one again and rework it, which was done with songwriter and friend of Rivers, Josh Alexander. As a tune, Lonely Girl is standard Weezer power pop with maybe a bit of a nostalgic 1960s undercurrent. Despite the superficial lyrics, there's also a bit of a creepy element if you look at lines like, "I know you're scared, I know you're sad, I'm here to help you realize it's not so bad. So open your arms and let me come in. I'd never hurt you, 'cause that would be a sin." Cuomo and the ladies. It seems to be complicated. I've Had It Up to Here was co-written by Justin Hawkins, you know, that over-the-top, fantastic goofball singer of The Darkness. And once you know that, you can really hear it, as Cuomo uses his falsetto on this track quite a bit. And yeah, it's something that Justin Hawkins could be singing as well. The verses have a cool, accentuated rhythm guitar groove that is a bit different from the usual Weezer approach. There is a middle 8 that turns from a faux reggae feel to overblown guitar pomp, also not unlike The Darkness. Rivers muses about the conflict between personal artistic ambition wanting mass success and at the same time unwillingly pandering to the taste and expectations of the public. Again, I think this shows the constant inner strife of the rock songwriter, a theme that runs through Rivers' artistic output. After the equally cute and embarrassing apology to rock fans in Back to the Shack, the mood here is much more defying, sulky, almost a bit confrontational. I tried to give my best to you, but you plugged up your ears, and now I just can't take no more. I've had it up to here. The motto of any small, unviewed YouTube channel, maybe.
Don't need the whole wide world to love me. Don't wanna win the human race. Don't need my music to be less well known than my face. Don't wanna compromise my art for universal appeal. Don't wanna be mass consumed. I'm not a happy meal. I tried to give my best to you.
Yeah. Difficult lyrics, but great song. In fact, in my opinion, one of the best on this album. The song directly segues into the a little bit odd The British Are Coming that has its roots in the unfinished Ecce Homo concept album. Here it's all about gaining independence or revolting against an authority or father figure, using references to the American Revolutionary War and Paul Revere. The musical delivery and melodies are a bit more sophisticated and complex on this one, but still the chorus is so hooky, it immediately sticks. The British are coming. Yeah. Have you identified the pattern by now? Of course, the next song, Da Vinci, again is about women. It's another collaboration with Josh Alexander and more pop rock, including a rather unnerving whistling hook, one that allegedly producer Rick Ocasek wasn't very happy about. One gets used to it. The lyric eye in this song is at a loss for words, being completely stunned and gobsmacked by an unspecified lady. I think this is one of the better songs addressing romantic relationships on the album. Next one, Go Away. Oh no, the pattern is broken. The obsessional neurotic in me is facing troubles. This is another song about relationships. Should have been about fans now, right? The song is a simple, generic boy falls out with a girl and she tells him to go away story. But what makes this song interesting is that it's a dialogue and hence it's sung as a duet with the male and the female protagonists taking turns in the verses. The track features Bethany Cosentino from the indie pop duo Best Coast, who also co-wrote this song. The other half of Best Coast, Bob Bruno, can be heard on additional guitar. It's a fun song, though maybe not very substantial, and influenced, I would say, by pop songs from the 50s and 60s. And this might be the first official duet on a Weezer album, but I need to double check that. This song was never issued as a single, but gained belated popularity this year due to, what else could it be these days, a TikTok trend, and thus even entered the Billboard Top 100 in April 2026. Some songs have funny life circles. More songs about women with Cleopatra. This track starts off into one direction and then progresses into a completely different one. At first, there is strummed acoustic guitar, a simple stomping bass drum, and harmonica. But before you can really start to wonder if Weezer are going all out country rock, the track becomes heavier with the crunchiest guitars of the entire album, solos, and a tricky rhythmical phrasing to squeeze in the lyrics of the chorus. Almost feels as if the song was tripping over its own words, which, however, creates a cool groove. Cleopatra was released as a single. It's a pretty cool choice. Again, I have a little bit of problems with Cuomo's lyricism about breaking away from the influence of a woman as she gets older and her beauty fades. There's almost zero subtlety or empathy or depth in a lot of his relationship lyrics. And then, how old was Rivers Cuomo himself at the time? Approaching his mid-40s? I sometimes worry how much of the true Rivers Cuomo actually lies in such lyrics. Musically, however, this is a stone cold Weezer classic, highlight of the album.
You can't control me no more, Cleopatra. Patra, Patra. You can't control me no more, Cleopatra. Patra, Patra.
Foolish Father seems more genuinely personal and heartfelt in terms of lyrics. This might be Rivers singing to his own daughter, thinking about his own shortcomings as a parent. But famously, he also had a difficult relationship with his own father. So maybe also something of that is reflected in the song's lyrics. It's another very solid, if maybe a bit melodramatic track that ends with the album's title being sung. The album unexpectedly ends with an epic in 3 parts. One can also see this as one big piece, the so-called Futurescope trilogy. At its core, this goes back to the various concept album ideas of the band between 2010 and 2013. Presumably, the Futurescope is a device that shows images of the future, here used once more to answer the questions of how to find love, fame, and one's father. We might be talking about progressive power pop here. The first part is called The Wasteland. Although they don't deviate from their standard instrumentation, this shows a different, more bombastic stadium hard rock side of Weezer. After this prelude, part 2, titled Anonymous, starts as a piano ballad but soon turns into the Weezer version of a theatrical hard rock song sung to an unknown or estranged father. I'm not so keen on that part, to be honest, except for the hard-rocking guitar jam at the end. The final part is called Return to Ithaca. It's another instrumental and refers to the return of Ulysses to his wife after spending years on the Odyssey. Layers of glorious, triumphant guitars provide a celebratory melody, a little bit like Queen or a more watered-down version of Muse during their over-the-top bombastic phase. This definitely shows a bit more musical skill from the band, especially to those who usually associate Weezer only with punky power chords. Does this trilogy make any sense? Not really, at least not for me. But this final part is really fun, and I appreciate that Weezer, at least by their standards, went for something more surprising and experimental here. Everything Will Be Alright in the end received mostly favorable reviews, with both critics and fans seeing the album as a return to form and to a sound that Weezer simply does best. The hooks definitely were back, combined with those powerful guitars, and I'm mostly inclined to agree with this reception. I mean, you cannot turn back time, and Weezer will not be able to go back to the mid-90s when they were in their 20s and recapture that spirit and attitude completely, but Everything Will Be Alright in the end definitely is one of their better albums. It's catchy and fun to listen to, with a number of really good tracks. Cringeworthy lyrics here and there, but that's always been something to reckon with on Weezer albums. It's sometimes a bit strange to embrace an album that so openly begs to be embraced and simultaneously doesn't hide the fact that it's calculated to sound like something that the typical Weezer fan should like. And at the same time, there is something intriguing about this quirky meta level approach and the, as mentioned, apologetic nature of this album. If you look at some of the stuff the band put out afterwards, the whole thing gets even weirder, but I suppose at that point in time, this was the best version of Weezer that was possible, and I unironically recommend Everything Will Be Alright in the end to fans of older Weezer and to fans of fun power pop, maybe punk pop in general. Nobody wants to see that. Thanks for watching. Consider tuning in again.